Okay, episode 3 now of the Age Gap podcast with myself, Abraham Delgado, and Steven Holman. So we are talking about our perspectives, mine being the millennial one, him being the boomer one, and let's get into it. We're going to talk about some good old-fashioned gun control and mental health today. So, Steven, why don't you kick off something, that you feel about what you heard in the news this week?
So obviously, the events in Texas last week were just absolutely horrific. I remember Sandy Hook, and it did not impact me nearly as much as what happened last week. It didn't register with me 10 years ago that they were all kids, that they were children. And what happened last week, it's just, I know exactly who my teacher was and what my classroom looked like when I was in 4th grade. And I don't know, it hit me really hard. With that being said, I'll start with gun control. And I will say this, that, and it's an old line and it's been heard a million times before, guns don't kill people, people kill people. And if that young man had been motivated enough, he probably could have figured out a way to set off a bomb. There are plenty of other ways that he could have done it without a gun. Now, should an 18-year-old have access to buying a submachine gun, an automatic rifle? No, I don't believe that. Our brains are still forming until at least 25 years old. And so, now that I'm past that age, I would even consider raising the drinking age higher.
Okay.
But so that's specific about that young man. Gun control in general, it is the Second Amendment for a reason. It's not the third, it's not the fourth, it's not the 16th, it's the second one. And the reason that we have the Second Amendment, at least at the time that it was written, was that the people who wrote the document strongly believed that if the government got too powerful, that people should be able to be armed to fight back against it. And I got to tell you, our government's heading in a direction that actually may happen someday, that the people rise up against the government. And so I think guns should be legal. I think right now there are more things that we could put into place. The real problem in my eyes right now is the ability to go to a gun show and buy without a background check. And so essentially the law, as I understand it, is written that the reason for the gun show loophole is that two people can sell to each other without having a background check. So I could sell you, a friend of mine, a gun, and you don't have to go through a background check.
Right.
I think that loophole needs to be closed up very quickly. It would not have prevented what happened in Texas, but
I was going to ask that. That was something I want to. I don't know the details of how this person got the guns. So do you know the details? Have you heard?
He turned 18 like 10 days before, and on his birthday he went in and bought 2 guns.
Oh wow. Okay, so it was just that easy.
Yep.
Okay.
But now they had to do a background check.
I was gonna say. I mean, I don't know about, because I do know that there's a background check. Is that within all
Yes.
the states? Is that like
Yes. Yes.
federally across the board?
That is a federal mandate.
Okay.
I believe. I should say I believe.
Okay.
But here's the deal. This kid had a number of run-ins with the law. Nothing major, but he was known to the local police department, and never once was anything put into his records that he might be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they did background check, he was free and clear, no problems.
And do you suspect that this is just a there's a real politicization of what happens in these cases, right? Where there's like now the viral video of Beto O'Rourke going up to the mayor and the governor, shouting, and then them going back and forth about this whole thing, and Ted Cruz, getting into it with Sky News about how like this is just a classic case of mental health issues, and there's this real. I don't, I in a principled way, I do believe that a gun is not. I could see and empathize with the understanding that a gun is not something that will kill a person unless a person grabs the gun and actually does the act. I think there's too much of a shield that a lot of the Republicans and just like I don't even know if it's just Republicans. I think it's just people who want this sort of base like support, and I think they hide behind the mental health issue. Because I think that is something that it feels just too easy at this point. It feels too, and just as much as like oh we need to take guns or like gun control, we need to take guns out of people's hands. That's going to solve this problem. I don't think that's going to solve the problem either. I don't know if that does. And then you have people who bring in cases about. Just internationally, like, oh, what's the mass shooting rate in Japan? What's the mass shooting rate in England? So, all those things definitely should be taken into account at least.
Okay. The last thing, there was something else I wanted to address, but the last thing you said, they don't have nearly as many mass killings with guns in those other countries. However, when you take into account the population of our country and you do it on a percentage basis or a per capita basis, they're not that far off between each other.
Okay. I don't, and also I don't know. I was actually being a parrot with that information, but I was feeling like you probably knew something about that, so I'm glad that you brought that up.
And yes, we absolutely on a real case number basis, we have more than any other country. We also, with the exception of China, are we the second largest country in the world now?
No, India and China, and I think there's maybe Mexico. I don't know, but definitely India and China. The most populated.
In terms of population, right?
Correct.
Okay. But I know Germany and the European countries. Let me limit my statement to that. The European countries, when you adjust for the actual population base, we're not that. We are larger. We have more, but the per capita, it's not that much more than the other countries. So that's one thing. God, what else did you say before that? Do you remember?
I was talking about how there's a lot of hiding behind mental health on one side, and then just the straight out banning guns on the other side.
Yeah, you know, on one side they're just like, well, first of all, contemplate this. There are somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 million guns in the United States.
That's a
You
shit.
know how many? You know how many people there are?
Is there less?
Yeah, there's 330 million people. We have more guns than we have people in this country.
That's
Okay.
wild.
I don't know about you, but I don't own a gun.
I don't
Um,
either. I
so,
mean, I think we have a gun here, but I think it's just like a rifle that my cousin left over. Anyways.
and then there are different types of guns. The president came out today and he was criticizing a 9 millimeter handgun. I don't know anything about guns, so I don't know what it means to be 9 millimeters. My guess is if he's criticizing it the way he was, it must be a pretty big gun, handgun.
I think it's a really average handgun, actually. Like
Is
9 millimeter is like the one of the more standard like handguns. I think police officers use them.
But let's say that one side got their wish, and Beto, remember Beto during the Democratic primaries, he came out and said, "Damn right, I'm going to come and get your guns." Um, can you imagine what that would actually entail, and how those people who were losing their guns would react?
I don't know. You know, it would be shitty on as a like a feeling, but you know, it's funny as you bring that up. In my mind, I'm like, I don't see that. Like, I don't see it changing gun. I don't know if I see it changing gun violence if you take away the legal guns, because a lot of activities happen through illegal gun activity, right? So that you know, it's not the dad and the son who have guns to go into the desert and shoot beer cans that are causing a lot of gun violence. Like you know, like at least that doesn't equate that to me.
Did you say in the desert?
Yeah.
Okay, let me tell you why I'm laughing. Being from Michigan and the Northeast, dads and sons don't go in the desert to shoot cans. They go to their camps. They go up north somewhere,
Yeah, yeah.
and they don't really waste their time with guns. They or cans. They're out there, you know, looking for animals that have antlers and things like that.
Real real
Yeah.
hunting stuff.
Now, again, I never got into that. That wasn't anything that my dad, you know, I went fishing. That was about the extent of my hunting. And I did that maybe 5 times in my life because I couldn't stand the little worms wiggling around as I tried to. And I
That
didn't like the idea of sticking them with something.
wow, you were such a nerd, dude. That is you were squeamish around the just putting the needle the bait, just hooking the bait. You were getting squeamish.
Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah, pretty much. When I wanted to go down to the little brook in one of the towns I lived in to go fishing, I took I didn't know any better, but I took the you know the hooks, the metal hooks that you hang Christmas tree bulbs on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I took one of those, and that was my hook. And then I took a couple of pieces of bologna as my bait.
Oh, wow. That
Yeah.
is so that's almost as that's probably as bad as the first day of basketball practice I ever had when I first signed up in like 8th grade, and I showed up in just straight up Converse. Like I was just like, all right, these are my basketball shoes. Okay, but back to the point of
Yes.
it's taking away guns, it's solving it, illegal gun activity. You know, these talk about. I heard this point that we have a shit ton of mass shootings potentially every single day in the United States, and most of it is due to gang violence. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's true. I don't really know. You know.
So
There,
you brought up a great point. Do you mind if I interrupt you?
yeah, please. No, yeah, yeah.
So think about this, and it just god awful that 19 children died and 2 adults, right? In 3 weekends in the city of Chicago, that many people are murdered.
That's
Okay,
wild. Like I have heard that those sort of
and
statistics.
and there's no one up in arms about it, and it's it's really bad. I mean, that's one city, and that's 3 weekends. You know, it's just,
And
wow.
would you equate that to mental health?
God, that's a great question. Um, wow. No, I wouldn't.
Hmm. Okay.
Uh, but there's a problem in Chicago. I don't know what it is, but too many people are dying.
I mean that sounds a lot like it could be mental health. I mean, and not in like a I'm just so anxious or whatever, but like I mean, think about like a city being terrorized that like lives under that sort of like war zone constantly. Like that must be tolling. Like, you know, I'm sure the PTSD of like a normal citizen there is probably a lot similar to like other war torn cities in the Middle East. I feel like there probably are people who are like, dude, like you have no, like every single day I'm like, yeah, I could be dead, a family member could be dead, and I just live with that, and I just constantly live in that, and that may potentially perpetuate any sort of violence. That's just maybe a little bit of a tangent about that, but I mean, I think overall, I'm just curious about how people feel. Again, I really do believe there's too much of a shield being held up of the mental health issue on the conservative side. In the same way, I heard this point where somebody was like, do you think that women who get abortions, do you think that's a mental health issue? Like,
Wow.
do you equate that to mental health issues? Why would you ban abortion when you could be solving a mental health problem that, you know, eventually leads to there?
Yeah, I don't think that's a mental health issue at
Okay.
all. I think
Do you real quick? Do you think it's a reach? Do you think that's a bit of a reach in that equating that same sort of thing? Oh, your video. There you go. You're back.
I don't know how far back you have to go for this number to be true, but I heard, being a parent, that since abortion has been legal in this country, they've performed 63 million abortions.
Oh, I have heard something like that too. And I don't.
And,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. Like what that number, like how long all of that is, but
but
I have heard
that,
that.
that then requires 63 million people to have mental issues.
I mean, that would sound about right. I mean, and not in some, and in,
But they're all women.
yeah, you know, I mean, I mean, I don't know how long that's, you know, again, I don't know how many years that is. Like, is that in 1 year? In 1 year, 63
No, no,
million
no, no.
abortions?
That's like
You know
going
what?
back.
But that's what I mean, though. It's like going back for so long. It's
Yep.
like, dude, I don't know, you know, and also, like, the amount of like murder, like gun violence that occurs, like how much of it is mental health? It's like,
Well,
I don't know.
going back to Chicago, those murders every weekend, that to me, that's not a mental health issue. That's gang violence.
What do you
And
think? I mean, what do you equate that, you know, putting yourself in that position to do those things? Do you feel like that's Like you're just like that's just you're choosing a bad option. That's what it is. You're just in a position of like you're just in a shitty position, and that's what's going on in your life. Not mental health, but just these are the options of the landscape.
You're in a shitty position, and that's what happens in the area you're in and you're in that area because of the shitty position you're in. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, I hear you. I'm understanding.
And yeah. I mean, a lot of this stuff in Chicago is drive-by shootings. They're fully aware of what they're doing.
I agree. But they're aware of the action, but it's like what you said, like development. Like these people probably most of the let's say of the actors in this violence, like I think their median age is probably within being a teenager.
Yeah.
It's like these are not developed adults doing these things. These are children who have like super low thought of repercussions of them just understanding like how much more of life is out there for them.
Yeah.
So
they've been stuck in this very small area, and that's all they know is what's going on in their neighborhood. And, in some cases, to survive, you got to join the group.
I'm really just, I keep thinking about this issue of of these sort of school shootings, because it's clearly something, and it's not just school shootings, right? There was Orlando, like you said, Sandy Hook, there was Vegas, Buffalo, clearly, yeah, Buffalo, where, I mean, Buffalo was a straight out hate crime, as it was manifest, there was a full on, like sort of manifesto about it. It's like, are these all linked? Is that mental health? Somebody who is like, doing
now
such
we're
a
getting
thing.
to, and I've been thinking about this for a few minutes. We almost have to get to the point where we define what mental health is, or
I agree. By the way, I do agree with that.
What poor mental health is. One thing I would say is I think we have a lot more young people who have mental health issues than we did 2 years ago before the pandemic. I think kids being kept out of school, being kept at home, doing what we're doing right here, but being able to close their camera and play video games all day because the teacher couldn't stop it. I think I don't think we're going to know the extent to how much we harmed an entire generation by keeping them out of school for a year or more.
I agree. I think those are unnatural things for us to have any sort of like reference to. Like we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but think about how much of school was social. Just hanging out with your friends, or learning how to handle the bully on the playground. Just all of the things that you had to go through that required interactions with other humans. And
I do agree.
We took that away from kids who were, in the very middle of their developmental stage.
I agree. That's it. I really do agree. I don't know anything around that outside of my take on the whole thing. My 2 cents about it was really like kids are the least susceptible to COVID and blah 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 blah, that sort of statistic. So I did believe that like they should, the least amount of like pressures and like constraints around the virus around them, I think we shouldn't have. They got hit the hardest, which is in the sense of like state sanctioned, like them needing to wear masks all the time and all these things. It was the adults that got to, go to concerts, go to sports arenas, restaurants, and still be able to live their life in that fashion. I mean, okay, so yeah, there is a really broad, there is this broad stroke of mental health that people try to wave. Again, on both sides, there is a lot of liberal, progressive thought around mental health, and which is great, and it gets championed these days. And then you have a lot of conservatives who will now use that, or you can, sort of say weaponize that when it's time to defend the Second Amendment or, whatever. So,
see, that word right there is the biggest problem we have.
Weaponize.
You have groups weaponizing things that I mean, 19 kids were killed. You don't weaponize that. I'm sorry, on either side.
I agree. I agree. My take is that politicians will do what politicians do, and they will weaponize it.
Yes, 100%. There's no two ways about that. It shouldn't be happening. But yes, you're 100% right.
Solution-wise, this is sort of another part of the irony, right? NRA, they had their conference or their thing. They prohibited firearms because they're apparently dangerous. So that was a lot of what people were, bringing up that issue, where it's like, hey, like if this is such a, if it's safer if everybody in the room had guns, why are guns prohibited? So I think people are bringing up that just keep that same energy. We just want to know, are you guys being, hypocritical or not?
Yeah, it's, again, we're talking about gun control and mental health. I'm going to get to something here, but I have another thought that I just want to get out there. This whole thing down in Texas, it doesn't feel right. There is something missing in all of this story, but we can come back to that. People are looking at this shooting, and the one in Buffalo, as a deranged person who's mentally ill with a gun. And on one side, you have people saying, oh, we got to take the guns away. And on the other side, you have people saying, oh, we got to address mental health. First of all, taking guns away would be a hell of a lot easier than addressing mental health, because there isn't a test for mental health. I mean, there is, but it's not biology. It's not biology. You know what I mean? It's listening to someone, and if you really start cracking down on people who appear to have mental health issues, you're going to guess wrong in a lot of cases.
It's a slippery slope, it feels like.
Yeah. And so, having said all that, we're looking at, gun control and mental health. But what would have stopped this kid? Another gun. Teachers, there has been talk in the past about having 3 or 4 teachers who get a lot of training in guns, and they carry a gun with them in their class. And if somebody is going to go in to do a shooting like that, they have no idea who has the gun.
I think that is, I think that's asking a lot for the teachers. unnecessarily.
But you have teachers volunteering. You're not asking the teachers to do it.
That's true. I mean, if teachers volunteered to, hey, like I'm willing to be one of the trained, people, whatever, where I can carry a gun in here, sure. I remember listening to this guy talking about owning a gun and using it as self-defense, and he said having a gun in your home is the last step in defense. You need to have locked doors. You need to have cameras. You need to have all these things, before you feel like, no, I need to stay safe. In order for me to do that, I need to have a gun. And it's like, again, make sure you have all these other measures of safety. And I think about that, and I'm like, okay, well, do schools have that then? Like, if are schools incredibly safe up until the last, defense of, we need to have a gun on campus? So I think that's food for thought. I think I've heard the one entrance, one exit, sort of thing.
But
an armed guard, all that.
That's going on right now. I was substitute teaching 3 years ago in Hudson, Massachusetts, and there was one way in and one way out. What happened in the school in Texas? A teacher went and propped the door open with a chair. That was supposed to be closed and locked. Now, they did that probably because, no one with a gun is going to be out there today. This is the second to last day of school. We have field day, and we're all going to be doing sports outside, and it's hotter than hell in here. Let's get some air circulating. I totally understand what that person. Now, that person is going to have a horrendous life for the rest of her life, living with that.
Yeah, that's I was thinking about those sort of things. It really is. It really is the combination of, listen, of course I'm not going to think this could happen here because, of course, nothing like that has happened here. And so in my mind, I'm thinking this is just a normal, another day at school.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's
Uvalde, Texas. My God.
Yeah, and especially that you're in Texas, you probably do have a community gun culture around you. You don't think that there's people who are like, no one's going to try to, I wish somebody would try to do that here, like see how fast somebody comes with a gun. Like that type of mindset too, all those things attached to it.
Yeah, I'll take them out.
Yeah, I'm sure I would take them out. It's like, I'm real fucking sure you would. Okay. I think I want to keep this concise. The responsibility and the failures of the police and the utter irresponsibility and the utter failures of the police, them, not doing their job correctly. And what are police officers willing and should be willing to do in such a case like this?
You are a first responder, and even if you're in a tiny little podunk town like Uvalde, you are there to serve and protect, and that means you might have to take a bullet. And that's how I view police officers, and it's why I would never in a million years have become a police officer, because I'm not willing to do that. I think it takes a very special person to say, okay, I'll stand between you and a bullet. And to me, that's what a cop is supposed to do. When at the end of the day, the hardest part of their job, that's what they're supposed to do.
I agree. I 100% agree. I was talking to my brother about it, the following day of it, and we were talking about. He was just like, do you even know what the police's credo is? Like what they like their whole motto and stuff like that. And you read it, And it really is this, this oath. It's like this oath of like, oh, you are like injustice, like you will put your life on the line for this.
Yep.
And because a part of me just before that was like, hey man, this is just a job, like you're not supposed to just like, these cops shouldn't be just out there like, willing to die. But then I'm like, well, what are you doing this? You're just like what are you running around giving parking tickets? Like,
exactly.
Like you're a police officer. Like there's a reason why when you go to a place, people go, hey, like drinks are on the house. Hey, food's on the house. Like it's when people go up and they show you respect. This is why when people are like Blue Lives Matter, this is the whole thing.
Yep.
So and it's true. It's the reason why I was definitely somebody who felt like, a lot of police officers got, it's like, hey, obviously this is a tough job. Like when, a couple years ago when people were saying, like abolish the cops and defund the police and those sort of things, I was like, oh, that's dumb. Like that's a dumb thing. That's what I thought, because I was like, cops are good for a reason, and it's this type of reason. And now you have this situation coming. You have this situation come, and now there's this a blatant, I don't know what it is. That's the thing. It's like, I don't know what it is. Outside of just completely, like, not knowing, or I don't know, it's just fear. It's just, there's a couple of things tied into it. There is one person who doesn't know what to do, so they don't know how to direct everybody, and then other people being afraid of authority, so they don't go on their own to go and do the thing that they need to be doing. And then next thing you know, a border patrol agent has to come, and they have to be the one who's like, I have no attachment to these cops other than the fact that like I am here to serve from and through injustice. So I'm going to go on my own accord and have to save the fucking day right now.
You have it totally right. The border patrol, they were not told that they could go in. They just gave a middle finger to the folks and they went. Okay? That is, to me, we're talking about cops and how I expect them to put their lives on the line if they ever have to. It's the same thing going into the military. I mean, you go into the military, you know that there's a chance that you're going to be put into, an active war zone. And there are going to be bullets flying around. Now we're getting into something really big here. A lot of military folks are really full of themselves. They think they're invincible, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But you kind of need that mindset to do it.
It's funny you say that. I was listening to some people talk about the mindset of soldiers and of recruiters and them going out and what they're looking for. And there will be a lot of it's like the whole you have to keep this bar of principle, across the board of like how people need to be treated, like what the culture needs to be outside of the military, here in the workplace versus in the military. And it's like there's a different type of people who are in the military who are willing to lay their life on the line. Like you can't expect them to be playing by the same rules as everybody else, because those rules that people are living by have obviously led these people to say, I would never join the military. And these people said, no, everything about my life was just pointed in this direction. I have really mixed feelings about the military. Growing up, I had a very anti-military. I was a very Rage Against the Machine type of anti-government, just like the man, and the military completely stood for all of that. And that was to me, it wasn't like it came from a place of I mean, I guess I kind of grew up with the Iraq War, you know, like when 9/11 happening, like I was in fourth grade when that happened. So you know, all those things were starting to happen in front of me, but, it made that to me was the type of culture that I latched onto, was the anti-military thing. And then growing up, I started to kind of, I guess, be a little bit more empathetic towards that. I don't even know if I would. That's the thing. It's like there's still a part of me that really doesn't like it. It's like there's still a huge part of me. Even cops. Growing up, it was fuck the cops. Like, yo, fuck the cops. Like, they're trying to bust up the parties. They're trying to, you know, they're unfair to us. Like look at how they treat people. Like, they think they're fucking better. They think they're above the law just because they're police officers. It's always been that energy. And it was definitely like cops are racist, you know, man. Like, look how they, you know, like how they treat people, this and that. Like, those are just fucking like white skinhead dudes who are just like police officers, like, you know, thick bushy mustaches, you know. Like that was definitely
like a 70s porn star, right?
Yeah, it was 100%. It was just like these guys are like straight arrowed, you know, like, you know, white straight male, you know, type of guys, and like they're the man. Like, these guys are the man.
Yeah, and they stand up and they puff their chest out, and they think they're God's gift to the world because they get to have a gun on their hip.
Yep, exactly, all those things.
They can put cuffs on you anytime they want. No, I totally understand that, you know, and to a certain degree, I had that as a kid too, just because didn't want them coming busting up the parties, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, in hindsight, there's a lot more they could have done than told us all to go home.
I mean, again, that's the feeling that I have about that then. And then again, as I get older and the scope of my awareness of what they actually do. And to be honest, the gift of social media, when like all of a sudden like things would pop up where it's like videos, like, you know, it would be like, you know, camera footage from the vest of them like just doing a normal like check-in on a home, and next thing you know, guns are like out and they're shooting at them, and it's like this is what they have to deal with like on a daily basis. And I'm like, holy shit, like that's actually real, like that's actually crazy that they actually have to deal with that. So again, it was just like, oh, like I empathize, and there's a lot of respect for that sort of service and duty. Again, that being said, when you're not doing that, when it actually comes time for you to do your job, you lose. You've lost so much respect from such a huge.
Whole group has lost everything. In that town.
Yeah, it's, and also, I don't think police officers in general lose any credibility across the board, because obviously this sort of speaks to this one specific town. But there's clearly, it's like, one, it's perpetuating the stereotypes, the sort of donut eating pig, you know, who's just good for nothing, that type of thing. Like, that's already out there. Like, you didn't help your community by doing any of this. Like, this is, it's sad. That's what it's sad, man. And obviously, like, for the parents of these children and you know, the family members of these people, it's like it just changes the entire community forever. It's fucking crazy, man.
Yeah, I think it's even more than a community. I mean, on some level, this has hit home even more so than Buffalo shooting. This has really hit home with everyone in the country, it seems.
I agree. I do agree with that. You know, this is kind of an obvious question I could feel from people like my friends. If my friends were in the room, this question would be, you know, good enough to ask, which is, does this hit more because at first, because the Buffalo is dealt with the black community, and we have somehow diminished the severity of that, versus this being, obviously this is children, there's probably some, you know, there's a lot of children of potentially, you know, of color, Mexican, white, probably even some black kids in there. And it's obviously very drastic. It's like completely innocent, just like the people in Buffalo. But I think some people definitely feel that there might have been some diminishment on the, you know, in comparison. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and you know, let me say I hope not.
Okay.
I sincerely hope not. Do I think it's possible? Yeah, unfortunately I do. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I think it's a question worth asking. Again, it could be yes, you know, and it's I just thought that because it's exactly how as you were framing it and saying it, I felt the same way. You know, the Buffalo shooting, it was tragic when I heard about it, and when I heard this, it felt even worse. And so I was just like, yeah, I wonder if it's, you know, I wonder if there is something about that, or if it's just, I mean, children in general, if you hear anything that ever happens to children in general, that always feels like the worst because it's children. It's literally kids. It's just like.
And to me, that's where the difference is. It's not about race, but it's about, and this is awful to say, but it's about the people who were killed. Again, you have adults in Buffalo. You have, you know, 10-year-olds in Texas.
Yeah.
And
I won't speak for you, but maybe you feel the same way. But it's not. This isn't a worse Olympics. You know, this isn't the Olympics to see. You know, if this is worse or that. It's just. It's a very human feeling when you hear things about children versus, again, when I heard about the Buffalo shootings and I saw the victims, I was like, this is terrible. You know, and a lot of them were, you know, were older in their, you know, 60s, some in their 70s, some in their, you know, like 40s. I think there was even, you know, some younger people, but it definitely, again, like when you, in comparison, it's like, oh, here are older people, and then here are children. That's the feeling.
Yeah, I'd like to think that's the difference, and that's why there is so much more attention being paid to it. I hope it is, at least.
Yeah, I think. Listen, this has been really good because I think these are some ideas and questions that I think we.
You know what I like about this stuff?
Mm.
We can talk about this stuff and not be happy, but leave it and knowing that we haven't solved anything, or and I don't think that's the purpose of what we're doing here. But you know, I like that neither one of us is saying, no, it's got to be about gun control. No, it's got to be about mental health. These are conversations that need to be had by everyone. And then somebody, you know, someone in charge needs to say, okay, we're going to take a little bit from here, and we're going to take a little bit from here, and we're gonna try to make this better so it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen again.
Man, I think that's one of the. Man, I think that's just a really shitty thing. I think Obama talked about that when he was president, about how he was just like, this is going to happen again. It was Sandy Hook happened under him.
10 years ago, so yeah, it would have been.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was just like, damn, like, it's like, this is going to happen again?
Yep.
Like, that's such a fucking, like, it's like if you told me the pandemic's going to happen again, I'd be like, okay. I'm like, okay. But you know what I mean? Like this though, I'm like, this has to happen again. This has to happen again. It's like, yeah, it's more than likely going to happen again.
Okay. Before we go, I just want to tell you some things that don't make sense to me about.
Yes, I would. Yes, I am curious about this.
He had a car accident.
He had a car accident?
Yeah. He crashed his truck before he crashed his truck at the school before he got out.
Okay.
Okay? Why? I mean, was he in such a hurry to get there that, again, I don't understand how and why he had a car accident on his way to a mass murder. It doesn't make sense.
You would feel like you would be more careful.
Car accidents don't happen that often. He didn't have it with another car. It was a solo accident. And I don't know anything about how it happened or why.
I mean, do you know how drastic it was, though? I mean, a car accident could be him backing into an electric box. You know, I don't know.
I recall seeing a picture where the wheels were bent. They were bent in.
Okay, so it was clearly bad enough for some real damage.
So he has a car accident, and then he says, "Oh my God, I got to complete this mass murder." And he gets out and he has his 2 guns and all this ammo, and he's wearing armor. He's wearing Kevlar. So that says to me, he wants to live.
That's
He's not going in there.
That's usually most.
I think there are a lot of them who want to have suicide by cops.
You know, there was this thing that I learned about how a lot of victims of suicide by cutting themselves, they hold the blade usually with a napkin to prevent themselves from cutting themselves. You know, like when you carefully pick it up, before you do that, before you go and slit your wrists. And
I've never heard that.
But you see what I mean by that?
Yeah.
That to me is like the same sort of connection to the there's a part of you that doesn't want to do this, obviously. Like you don't want to harm yourself. Like you want to end it, but you don't want to hurt.
Well, help me here. What could possibly be going through someone's mind? I'm going to go in and try to shoot up as many little kids as I can. And I want to live to tell about it.
Potentially.
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, a lot of people equate that all of these mass shooters, though, a major common thing. They say this, that they're they want to be in a headline because they'll see their photo on the news and their manifesto or whatever they talked about is being shared around, and all these life details about them are all of a sudden public. I don't actually believe that. I don't know if I believe that these people want to be famous. That doesn't ring very true with me. I mean, maybe some of them do, but I don't know if it's being done for that sort of that thing.
So here's the other thing. So he gets out of the car that he just crashed.
Mm-hmm.
According to the timeline that they told us about on Friday, he was outside of the school for 12 minutes, and he was firing his gun. He shot at a funeral home that was across the street because there were people coming out of it.
Holy shit.
So there are gunshots going off, right? Are you telling me that no one in the school heard this? And I got to believe someone heard it. In those 12 minutes is when that teacher went and opened that door and put a chair in it. I can't believe that they didn't hear the gunfire. Why in the world would you go and open a door?
I don't know. I mean, it's clearly clearly they're going to be doing a deep investigation on this for probably a while. But it's like in the same way that like mishandling could just happen. Like just you could have been that teacher propping up the door. You probably did hear something, but you probably heard it with other things going on in the school at the same time, and you probably aren't registering it, and you're just going about your day because, again, like you said, nothing like that would ever happen here, so gunshots, what you're hearing may not register as gunshots to you. Again, so it's like...
If I heard gunshot, I wouldn't know it was gunshot.
Yeah, it just depends on... everything. It's like, that's it. It's like, it just depends on so many things. That's the thing. It just depends on so many things.
So here's the other thing. He's outside the school. He's shooting his gun. I don't mean to use the word lucky or fortuitous, but every door in that school is locked except for the front door. And he's over on the side of the building. And it doesn't appear like he's heading towards the front door. How fortuitous is it that all of a sudden this door opens up and he can get in? And if the door doesn't open up, where's he going?
I mean, yeah, if the door wasn't open, it sounds like the entire school would have been locked. And this wouldn't have happened then.
Well, I can't say that, but I'm just trying to wonder what was he thinking. I mean,
but now you're doing like FBI work. Now you're like, what was this guy thinking? Like, what was like, and not necessarily what was this guy thinking, but like, you're like this is so strange that. Like, it seems like too coincidental,
It doesn't add up.
That's what it is. It feels too coincidental for you.
Yeah. And so if the door doesn't open, what else can he do? I mean, he's wearing body armor, so he obviously thinks he's going to get into a gunfight somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I don't get is, before he left, he shot his grandmother.
Yes.
He's on his way to a mass killing, and he decides he wants to shoot his grandmother? I mean...
I didn't know, yeah. I remember when I heard that, I was like, well, was the grandmother the only person in this guy's life? Is that what it is? Like, and then he was like, oh, I want everything I know to be gone. I don't know exactly. Like that,
The only thing I can think of is the grandmother saw him with his guns, all decked out in his gear, and she was trying to stop him. It's the only thing I can think of.
That could be super plausible. That could be super duper, or she's just like, where the fuck are you going with all that?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And
And apparently she lived, right?
Huh?
And apparently she lived? That's what I heard. That she got shot, but she lived.
Yep.
And she called 911 or maybe? I don't know.
Yep. She called 911. And I can imagine that she saw him and she said, if you leave here, I'm calling the police.
That right there, that sounds like a very plausible scenario.
But if that wasn't it, I mean, what the hell? And the grandfather went on TV, and he said they were arguing about a cell phone bill. Don't believe it. I don't believe it.
I mean, it's definitely not the reason why he shot his fucking grandma over a cell phone bill. It wasn't because he fucking went over his data plan, And
so there's just a lot of things for me that don't add up. And
I think
there were 19 cops in the hallways there for 40 minutes listening to this guy shoot kids. and not one of them disobeyed orders and said, "Fuck you, I'm going to go get him."
I'm actually, I could care less actually about all of the shooters' timeline. And I don't care a lot because a part of me is like, dude, it's done. I want to like, I want to even separate myself away from it. But I am curious to know the cops, like the interviews of these cops and on their timeline, what they're thinking, and just like, hey, so why didn't you do something? Or like, what was going through your head? Why, like, were you afraid of your commanding officer? Like, were you afraid that like, that somebody knew what to actually do, but then that person actually didn't know what to do, and then so you just blind leading the blind until eventually everyone just decided like, we're too scared. Like, I'm just curious. I just want to know.
Yeah.
The thing is I don't think we're gonna get I don't know if we'll get too much truth. It's almost one of those like cops already just being like, you know what, I need to get a lawyer. I need to make sure that like, like that I'm in the right defense for this. Like, you're not going to get pure truth. You're going to get like, I need to be able to win this because I don't want to end up in jail over this. And it's like, no, like accountability needs to happen. You don't like, this doesn't happen and then accountability is absent. Like, that's not supposed to happen.
If any of these folks face a jury of their peers, they're done. They're done.
Dude. I mean, the thing is, I don't know. It's like why would you go in front of a jury? Like, is this illegal? That's what I was curious about too. Like, is what the police officers did illegal, or was it just the fact that it was a miscarriage of their own fucking they don't know what they didn't do their job. That's what it was.
It's an excellent question. I have no idea. It's not doing something isn't illegal.
That's what I felt. I was just like I don't know if you'll go to jail. Like, you clearly deserve to get fired. That's not out of the question. But like, I'm like, that's it. Like, you just got fired. It's like, I don't know. That's the thing. I just don't know. That's why I also, again, back to the whole, like, I'm like, that's why I can't see myself just like going and like digging more for this information and like, oh, I can't wait to see more news about this, because it's just like, I don't know, like, I'm not a part of this investigation. This is just going to get taken care of, and this is just a sorry, sad case.
Yeah, and the one final thing I'm going to say is I heard someone replay an interview that the chief of the police department had, on CNN like the next day. And he said, well, they didn't go in because if they did, they might have gotten shot too. It's like, oh my God, this is the reason? And just one final thing. They don't have body armor sitting in their car that they could have run out and gotten? I mean,
listen, ultimately that is exactly what it was. It's like, these people did not go in because they were afraid of getting shot and killed. Yep. That's why.
Yep.
That's ultimately what it was. I mean, that's the closest thing to the truth that we'll probably get out of this entire thing.
Yeah. Well, one other thing. I promise we'll wrap it up in a second. I also heard that there was a Border Patrol agent who was getting his hair cut, and his wife was a teacher, and she texted him, telling him what was going on. He cut his hair cut, he said, okay, I'm done here. He asked the owner of the barber shop if he had a gun. The guy had a rifle. So he took the guy's rifle. He went over to the school, didn't tell anyone. He went into the school, found his wife in their class and got them out.
Fuck, man.
Huh? Now, see, that's the kind of guy that should have been a cop.
Yeah. And also, it's just fucking, it's the same thing. The story, I'm sure you heard about the woman who I think was like like they put her in handcuffs or whatever. She got out, she broke away, she jumped over, like went, grabbed her kid, got out. When I heard that, it was like the same thing. I was talking to my brother about it, and he was like, "Oh, I would have been one of those parents. Like I would have been one of those parents that would have like tried to get in there somehow." And I was like, "Yeah, but like, you know, they're obviously the cops are gonna like go and grab you." He's like, and this was kind of a good point in obviously in just like the like if I was in that position, but it's just definitely like, man, like, and if that was to happen, like, what do you do? You know, like if you're a parent, you're probably trusting that the police are doing their job, right? Like that's
not me.
That's what you're like, but that's the whole point, right? That's why we pay the tax dollars, and that's why Blue Lives Matter is because we're like, you guys are doing your job, right? Like, you guys are surrounding the perimeter, you guys are going in. Like, I see cops out here, that means there's probably cops in there, right? Like, in my mind, I'm just thinking, you're doing your job. I wouldn't assume otherwise.
I can see myself being of that mindset. I can also say my daughter or daughters are in there, and I'm not going to go home with a kid in a box tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go get them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I'm not seeing other kids coming out. I'm going to get them.
Yeah, I think, fuck, man. That's it. It's just, it's a big old, I don't even know. You know, it's just
yeah.
like,
The hardest part of that is, you know, I have kids that are different ages, so they were in different grades. You know, would I have been able to go and get them both? You know, that.
All those things. I bet,
Yeah.
listen, I bet all those things run through parents' minds, you know, all of them that felt that way. Yeah, this was a good one. I feel like this, not to say that it answered a lot of questions, I think there was just a good amount of perspectives here. And we,
I agree.
Yeah, man. What a fucking, damn.
Yeah, well, I hope we don't have a good topic like this to talk about again.
Yeah, exactly. You know.
I shouldn't call it a good topic. A very discussable topic.
Yes, something like this. It's like I don't want to have to talk about more school shootings either. So yeah, but we'll figure it out. Mental health.
Mental health.
All right.
Well, again, somebody got to define what that is.
Yeah, we'll have to. Maybe that's worth discussing some more in the upcoming ones. So.
Sounds good.
All right.
Have a good week.
Yeah, you too. I'll see you next one.
Peace, baby.
Peace.